And I want to see what he's saying. Okay, so then I hit the...
Well, time to begin. Excuse my voice, it's a little faded, but why I don't know what it is. On behalf of Long Beach Theosophical Society, I'd like to welcome everyone here for our lectures on the hidden side of life, perennial philosophy, the science behind science, whatever we might want to call it. They're all synonymous terms as far as the theosophical perspective is concerned. So please avail yourself in the back desk of all of the material that's present. Plus the two handouts announcing our summer break and also the programs for October, November, December. We have a very fine slate of speakers coming in October, November, and December. See if there's anything else we can announce. All the literature in the back desk is available for you. And I might review just for a moment. In October, we'll have a speak talk on the difference between Plato and Emerson, how those two giants of classical thought, brought about a certain spirituality. And then in November, we have a speak on the invisible worlds. Man coming out from Boston, one of our national speakers, he'll be speaking on invisible worlds. And in December, we'll have Karen Tate, a well-known woman in feminine problems, feminine spirituality, and she'll be speaking on how these relate to the winter solstice. So we have a very fine program, October, November, December. So please avail yourself of that program in the back of the room. I think that's about all the announcements we have. Tonight, all the way from Sweden, we have Eva Moberg, and she'll be speaking on on the art or philosophy of meditation. So Eva, this time.
Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and I think that we will have a great time exploring the subject of meditation. And to talk about meditation is like talking about the absolute. There is no beginning and there is no end. And I like to explore a little bit different levels of meditation here tonight. And I was just wondering how many of you have ever considered trying to meditate, or who have already been in the process of meditation? Okay, a lot. And then I can say congratulations. Everyone who has ever had a thought in that direction of meditation or interest in it, it's a very good proof of the spiritual evolution. Because it takes quite a few incarnations to come to the point where we first start to reflect on who we really are, and if we are something more than this body, if we are something more than our emotions and our thoughts. And that is the very first step in the process of meditation. But first of all, when I looked up and I asked a few people around when I was going to give this talk what they thought that meditation was, and I came across that there are about 8 different myths about what meditation is. And I like to sort of pinch the bubble from the beginning. The first thought was that meditation is Eastern. And of course, we all know that meditation and contemplation have been part of every religious and philosophical endeavor within human history. So it's by no means only Eastern. The next thought was that meditation was only for religious people. And of course, being a religious in the sense of wanting to come together and to connect, you could say, yes, it is for religious people in that sense, someone who wants to connect with their own inner spiritual aspect of themselves. But you don't have to participate in any specific religious belief in order to meditate. The other thing was that meditation takes hours. And of course, if we are someone like the Dalai Lama who spends 6 hours in meditation in order to be able to die consciously, we can say that there are not many of us that have that time. But you know, there are also self-help books today that says 2 minutes a day and you can learn to meditate. And it's true from a certain perspective. Everyone can have put aside a tiny bit of time each day, and that is well worthwhile. Another question that came up or answer was that meditation is relaxation. And that can be true. One can feel relaxed after having meditated. But there are also different techniques that not only make us feel relaxed, but also energizes us. So there is, I think, as many techniques of meditations as there are individuals to practice it. Another thing was that meditation is blanking out the mind. And you will be surprised how often that thought comes up. And of course, blanking out the mind is by no way a meditation. Meditation is actually to training the mind to do things we want instead of blanking it out. And so, if it is something that we do not recommend, is passive techniques in meditation. We don't want to make the mind, we don't want it to become passive. We want to become highly alert and active. And of course, also meditation is something that is used by cults. And that is also a myth that we have to crack, because of course there are cults that use the blanking out of the mind as a sign of brainwashing, but this is by no means what meditation is really about. So, to come to the meditation in itself, there are three things we need to ask ourselves. We need to ask, what is meditation? How does it work? And what is the purpose of it? Now, meditation, the way we normally look at it, is not meditation itself, it's the process of meditation. You can say that meditation is actually our true nature. Meditation is what we really are in our innermost nucleus of ourselves. It is that, you could say, absolute principle in us, that which we cannot describe, because any description of it would make it an object, and it's highly subjectified feeling. So meditation is our natural state, it's the pure consciousness without any modifications of the mind. Now, how does it work? Well, like everything else in nature, it works in cycles. So meditation is a cycle, the process of meditation is a cycle that we initiate. And in order for it to function, we do well in looking at nature. Everything is cyclic in nature, it's an inherent law. And so if we need or feel the need to meditate, we need to keep a cycle in it. We need to have regular hours, and I'm coming into that a little bit later. What we also need to understand is, we begin the process of training our mind, we need to take into account the law of karma, that we actually are creators of our own reality and our own future. And we create with the process of the mind. So that is why it's so important to try and start the process of meditation, to train the mind in a direction that we can create a reality for ourselves that is more balanced than the one that is now. In this also come into play reincarnation. I started off with saying that we can congratulate those of us that have ever wanted to go into meditation, because it is a sign that after many incarnations, the soul within us wakes up to the fact that we want to know more about who we truly are. So reincarnation also comes into it. Now, the true purpose of meditation is the fact that we are spiritual beings in our innermost nature. And we gradually incarnate into this world through different layers of matter, or through different layers of mind, if you so want, or different layers of states of consciousness. And then we wake up into the human phase, and having gone from being conscious to becoming self-conscious, we have to be able to develop us further by self-devised effort. And the goal is to become conscious of self. Just as in involution, we go into matter, we have to train our mind to be able to transition one state after the other back to the universal self, which is that very essence in our own nature. Patanjali has written a book, or the book of Patanjali is called Patanjali Yoga Aphorisms, and it's one of the best books on meditation that I can highly recommend. And there is a fantastic author called Taimni who has written commentaries on the yoga philosophy of Patanjali, and those two goes very well together for any one of you who want to deepen yourself into this subject.
Could you spell that?
Patanjali is P-A-T-A-N-J-A-L-I-S, and Yoga Aphorisms. The edition that I'm using is Mr. William Quan Judge rendition. And then the other book is called The Science of Yoga, I think it's called, and it is by Taimni. But you will have it because I have a handout. For those of you who want a handout, I have one that you can take when you leave. And there will be a reference list to these books as well, and where you can get them. So one of the first lines in Patanjali says, concentration or yoga is the hindering of the modifications of the thinking principle. Now, what does this mean? Well, it means that we as a spiritual being, we work through the identity of soul. Our soul has 3 different aspects. And if I would have had a blackboard, I could have drawn it for you. But we have to make do with you making the image in your head. So there is the universal aspect of soul. And that aspect makes us feel at one with everything else. That is that aspect of our soul which we have activated when we get an intuitive glimpse of something. You know that comes from the clear blue sky like a lightning. And you cannot really argue with it because you just know that this is the way it is. That is a glimpse of the intuitional or the universal aspect of the soul. Then there is the middle aspect of the soul, which is the individual aspect of the soul. And the individual aspect is what we feel as I am I. So this is what carries on from one life to the next. And here it is where all the memories, all the experiences are stored from a lifetime. And then we have the personal aspect of the soul, which is I am Eva, or I'm Leah, or I'm Leatrice. Whoever I am in this persona. The personality is the persona, which is the mask or the role that we take upon ourselves as individualities when we incarnate on this earth. Now the mind and the soul, how do they relate together? Well, we say that the mind is the active aspect of the soul. It's the instrument of the soul. And therefore we also have 3 levels of mind. And what I'm saying now is a very coarse division. Of course there are many sub-levels the whole way. But we are all familiar, I guess, with our personal mind. It's been called the monkey mind, because it jumps from one branch to the other the whole time. As you sit here and listen, even if you try and focus and be very polite and listen to what I say, your mind would wander off. It will do. There will be an association, there will be this and that, and all of a sudden, oh, what was Eva saying again? Or if someone is sitting and saying, oh God, is it going on forever? When is this going to end? And so the personal mind we're all too aware of. And the personal mind is, you could say, the contrary of meditation. The personal mind is the chattering. There's always a noise in that mind. Whereas meditation is perfect stillness. It's stillness in voice, it's stillness in speech, it's stillness in the body. And therefore, in order to be able to dissociate from the personal mind, we have to establish that which we call the witness position. Because we cannot really change something that we are identified with. This is one of the key points when you go to a good therapist. If you have a negative personal pattern, you cannot change this as long as you are identified with it. If you have a person who has a disease, we also know that the person who has a disease and are so identified with the disease that it has become part of their identity is the hardest patient to rehabilitate. And we could say that the lower mind is madness. It's like having a mental disease, in that sense that it needs a cure. But in order to cure it, there has to be something else that can actually start to observe it, to distance itself from it in order to be able to change it. And how many of you are savvy on the computer? Huh? Everyone familiar with a screen and the desktop? And everyone familiar with the icons on the desktop? Huh? And what happens when you double click on an icon? It opens up. So it's the same thing with meditation. Let's say we sit down for meditation and we just want to observe what thoughts comes up. Well, those thoughts are like the icons on our computer screen. As long as we don't double click them, we're okay. But the moment that we double click them, what they will do is they will open up a whole set of programs that will take up the whole screen. So we can say that meditation is actually about keeping the screen of your mind as clear as possible, so that you can actually reflect back the reality which is truly you. It is good to have different goals with meditation. One can have a close goal and then a little bit further distant goal. And the final goal, I would think, would be to be able to live in such a way that one can truly say that we benefit all sentient beings. That is the main goal, to be able to live in that bodhisattvic way. Now, small goals on the way can be, for example, to quiet the lower mind so that one can let one's own creativity flow a little bit more, that the intuition can make itself clearer, that we can become more spontaneous, that we can become more compassionate even in the small everyday life relationship with others, because this is what it all comes down to. So, from the book of The Voice of the Silent, there is a beautiful quote that I like to quote for you. It says that mind is like a mirror. It gathers dust while it reflects. It needs the gentle breezes of soul wisdom to brush away the dust of our illusions. Seek, O beginner, to blend thy mind and soul. So the question is, how can we make our mind so pure that it can actually blend with our soul, that it can be a useful instrument for the soul? And we know that the very first step in meditation is concentration. Why is that so? Anyone has an idea? Why is the first step in meditation concentration?
You want to reach a goal?
We want to reach a goal. In order to reach a goal, we want to be focused, right? Now, take for example stress. Stress is a diversification of the mind. When we are stressed, we feel that we're all over the place. That's why meditation also has an anti-stress effect, because it focuses the mind. So we can stay focused even if we are in stressful environments. And these are some of the side effects that we will get when we meditate, is that we will become more focused. We become more easily perceive the situation as it truly is, and interact with it instead of just reacting, which is an important distinction. So how to start to meditate? Say that we sit down to meditate. If we're going to instigate a habit, we must take care of the cyclic law in nature, as we said before. So pick an hour which is the most suitable for you, and that is the most liable moment that you can keep every day. It doesn't need to be more than 2 minutes to begin with, maybe 5. And gradually it can become increased. And if you have an egg clock, you know the one in time when you cook eggs, put it on 2 minutes to start with, if you're a beginner. And those 2 minutes will be some of the longest minutes in our life to begin with. So one has to begin with that which is fairly easily and accessible, and then to build on that. It is said if we have the possibility to choose a place where we can sit every day the same place, we build up a magnetic field around us that we can take advantage of. So if that's possible, it is recommended. Then it is not necessary to sit in the lotus position. For most of us, that is an impossibility. But what is recommended is to sit in a comfortable position, and preferably with the spine erect, and to try and keep that position. So what happens when we sit down and try and meditate? Well, I don't know about you guys, but what comes up for me is that I begin to notice the discomfort of the body. Ooh, it itches here, it scratches there, and my breath behaves sillily. I get a pain in my back, and so forth. Well, the body is the most basic principle that we have. So it's almost like we travel up the 7th principle of the human constitution when we sit down to meditate. Now, if I manage to sort of override the physical discomfort, what comes next? Well, it comes probably the astral or the emotional aspect. All of a sudden, things pops up that I haven't felt for a long time, and all of a sudden I find myself in my mind going all the way into an association. So I have double-clicked the icon again. And then when I manage to do that, comes the next level, the mental level. And so all the different thoughts keep popping up. And the same thing there. As soon as I follow that train of thought and I identify with it, I'm lost again. But it doesn't matter how many times we fall down. The most important thing is that we raise ourselves up again and try again. So the moment we can say, oh, I strayed, well, that is the witness position. Because if we would not be in the witness position, we couldn't see the fact that we had strayed. So in that sense, we bring back the mind and put it on track again. And it's like any other skill that we want to learn. Anyone try to learn how to play an instrument here in this audience? And if you play the piano, you have to practice doing the scales over and over again. It's exactly the same thing with meditation, and that's why it's good to start a little bit at a time. Now, why do we want to meditate? No one here knows? Then we're in bad shape. What do you say? Yes?
Well, I've heard, and I don't know what your take is, but that prayers are you're talking with God, and meditation you're really listening to God, listening. I like that, personally.
Yes, and that's a very nice point to bring up, because the lower mind keeps chattering, right? And is always active. So meditation is a way to stop the lower mind being active, so we can listen to that inner voice, which we can call the divine voice, we can call it God, but it's that universal consciousness which wells up in us. We have another thought on meditation. Who had their hand up more?
No, I was just
scratching the head. Well, that's dangerous, like being on an auction. You cannot scratch your head. Yes, go ahead.
I look at it like this, to quiet the mind, to find peace.
To find peace, yeah. And we see that we have different words for that inner depth within ourselves. Now, from a theosophical perspective, we know that in a 24-hour cycle, we all go through 3 major states of consciousness. The waking state consciousness, and how much awake it is debatable, but it is the waking state. Then there is the dream state of consciousness, and then there is the dreamless state of consciousness. And of course there are more states beyond that, but we will mainly be concerned here with these 3 states. So we live our life here in the waking state on earth. We can say we live in a virtual reality that we have created ourselves. Now, depending on how we live here now, will reflect itself into the dream state, will color it with all sorts of images. And then each one of us goes from the waking state through the dreaming state into the dreamless state, which is as close as we come to the pure consciousness in us in a 24-hour cycle. And there we regenerate, there we get all the nice inspirations, all the divine, you could say, longings, everything that belongs to the spiritual nature. And then when we come back again to waking state, we have to go through the dream state. And that's where the problem comes. Because how can we bring down those pure ideas from the dreamless state through the layer of dreams to come down here to make use of it at this level in the waking state? And that's where meditation comes in. When we sit for meditation, what we do is to practice the witness position. By practicing the witness position, we will eventually be able to go into what is called lucid dreaming. Have any one of you experienced that in a dream you actually know that you're dreaming? A couple have experienced that, and that's usually how it starts. That is to have established a tiny, tiny aspect of the witness position in the dream state. Now, the more we practice meditation, the more we will be able to move through these different states of consciousness and come back again down, for lack of a better expression, to this waking state with that memory intact. How many of you remember what you do during the night? Not very many of us. So there's a lot to explore. But the work starts here. Now, if we manage to establish the witness position so that we can move through these three states of consciousness, consciously, with awareness, what would be the next step, do you think? If we train, because the witness position is our true memory. That's the reminiscence in us, the true memory. So the witness position, if we establish that so we have that memory and we can move intact with awareness through these three different states, what would be the next step?
Well, eventually you'd be able to die that way.
Eventually we'll be able to die that way, that's true. If you ask the Dalai Lama, as I said before, why he meditates 6 hours a day, what his answer is that he would like to die consciously. He's someone who is a tulku. He comes back consciously and he dies consciously. And we, in the prolongation, if we can manage to know what we do during the night, we will also be able to bring our identity intact with us from one life to the other. And to have a view of all the incarnations we have ever lived. So meditation in that sense is a process of awakenings. So, as everything is in everything, again in this waking state, we have again the three states represented. So we have a waking state, and we have a dream state within the waking state. Is anyone more than me who daydreams sometime? And we also have a dreamless state within the waking state. And that dreamless state is when we have those clear moments that we just act from the heart, and we know that this is precisely where we want to be and what we have to do. So we practice here, and meditation is just a miniature version of what we then have to go through during the 24 hours. And again in its prolongation from one life to next life. So you can say, to sum it up, that to meditate is to remove hindrances to continuity of consciousness caused by the modifications of the mind. And boy, the mind is a tricky thing. It is said that whatever we direct our mind towards, the mind will shape itself after the object that it's observing. So one can ask oneself, how often do we actually perceive things as they really are? We have so many filters. And meditation has all to do about trying to make those filters a little bit more transparent. Now, along with this comes another aspect of meditation. Because there is the aspect of sitting down for meditation at a regular hour. And that is like a tuning fork. It's a way to tune our instrument. Now, the main reason with meditation is to reach that goal which we call the life meditation. And the life meditation is that which our heart is set upon. One life meditation could be to make money, but it's kind of a short-term meditation, because you can't really take the money with you when you go. And another meditation for someone who is working within the health field can be to be a really good doctor, or to be a really good musician, or to whatever. But whatever we have our heart set on, that becomes our life meditation. So if we ask ourselves, how many % of the time do we nourish the spiritual aspect of us in our daily lives? Because if we put in 20%, we cannot expect to get 85 out. It's kind of what we put in, we get out. So there is a beautiful story from the Hindu philosophy of a man who comes to the sage, and he says he wants to practice meditation. And so the sage says, very well, take this glass and fill it with water to the brim. And then walk through this palace here in front of you. And don't forget to repeat God's name while you do it. And so the sage goes with his glass of water, or the pupil, student goes with his glass of water, and he goes through this big palace. And there are the dancing girls, and there are the musicians, and there are the tables filled with all sorts of delicacies. There's everything that stimulates the senses. And the man is so concerned with not spilling the water, but he can't help by looking at all these beautiful things. And then finally, when he comes back to the sage, so the sage, well, how was it? And he said, I didn't spill a drop of water. So many beautiful things. And so the sage said, yes, and the man looks at the sage and says, yes, what? And he said, what about God? What about remembering God's name? Or truly, what about remembering who we really are? So what's getting in our way are our senses. Our senses are like wild horses. They're really, really good tools if you discipline them. If you know you can hold the reins and make them useful, so they create the power that goes in the direction you want to go. But most of the time, the mind is fragmented by our senses. So we feel this, we smell that, we eat that, and we say, well, I smell a nice food, I am hungry. No, I'm not hungry, my body needs food. Or I do this and that, and I think in a certain way, and I see, well, no, that's not me either. I'm something more than my thoughts. So let's do a little experiment together, shall we? Would you mind closing your eyes for 2 short minutes? Don't fall asleep on me, please. And so think for a moment how your body looks right now. You feel yourself sitting there? Have you got a clear image of your own body? How it looks like, roughly? Now, go back 30 years in time and try and remember how the body looks like then. Was it a little bit different? A lot different? Could everyone detect a change? Yes? Should I take that silence as a yes or a no?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Now, pick a time when you were about 16 and see if you can remember an emotional moment that you had then. If there was something around that age that sort of was emotional to you. And then come back to where you are now, at this age, and see Would it be the same emotional event for you if you experienced it today? No? Okay. Then think about yourself as 25. And think about an idea that you cherished at the age of 25. Could have been a political idea, a philosophical idea, or any type of idea. Something that had to do with your outlook on life. And then compare it with your outlook on life right now. How that idea resonates with you now. Is there a difference? Then please open your eyes again. How many of you could notice a difference? In the body, in the emotions, and in the thoughts? Both. Okay, so can you tell me what it was inside you that could recognize those changes?
Fulfillment of thoughts that were there when we were young and that followed and came true as we went along the way of life.
Yes, and who was it that went the way along of life?
Always the same.
Always the same, right? So here we have the perceiver. Here we have the perceiver, and it doesn't need to be more difficult than that. So when we try and sit down for meditation, start very, very basic. And as we practice, we will see that we will grow more and more into it, and that we will eventually be able to keep that witness position the whole way. The main goal is very well expressed in the voice of the silence. HBB, at the third fragment of the book, writes this: compassion is no attribute. It is the law of laws, eternal harmony, alias self, a shoreless universal essence, the light of everlasting right and fitness of all things, the law of love eternal. The more thou dost become one with it, thy being melted into its being, the more thy soul unites with that which is, the more thou wilt become compassion absolute. This is the goal of meditation. Now I'm hoping that we can have a little bit of a discussion and question and answer time. It's time. So, what do you say? Yes, please.
What you just concluded is not necessarily something that we need to aim for, because I believe it comes to that point by itself as we are doing it. And I think it may make it more difficult if maybe you had a teacher who says this is where you need to arrive, because then you get already scared but you start out.
Did everyone hear that?
No.
That if we have a set goal, or teacher says something that we should aim for, this can actually become a hindrance in our process. And I'm very happy that you brought that up, because what we actually have to do most of the time is to remove the obstacles, because it's not, compassion is not out there. And the witness position is not out there, it's all in here. It's not something that we add to us, but it's something we have to remove the obstacles. And one of the major obstacles is how the mind works. So before we have trained our mind to become a useful tool for the soul, then it will be difficult to arrive at that point. And you know, it's always the lower mind that wants to achieve something. Ooh, I want to be bodhisattva, or I want to do this, I want to do that. And of course we have to have the aim, it's important. Without having an image of what we want to achieve, we cannot move along in that direction. But foremost of all, we have to remove the obstacles that stand in the way for seeing who we truly are, and to begin to act like it. It's true. Yes, please.
Are the dreams connected in any way to meditation?
Are the dreams connected in any way to meditation? Yes, that's a very good question, Anselmo. Because dreams are colored by the way we live in daily life. And so when we start to meditate, we will notice, if we are persistent in it, that our dreams will become more clear. In the transaction of the Blavatsky Lodge, which is a theosophical book by H.P. Blavatsky, there is a section on dreams. And there she divides dreams into 7 types of dreams. And for the higher types of dreams to come through, the more lucid dream, the more intuitive dreams, the true premonitions, the true clear-sighted dreams, we need to be able to make the lower type of dreams fall away. That's the obstacles, the hindrances. And the way to do that is by living a life that is conducive to universal brotherhood, to the best of our ability. And one tool that we have to train our mind to keep on that focus is meditation. So it has very much to do with dreams, the meditation. Yes, please.
What is soul and how do you describe it?
Yes. What is soul? Well, soul is said to be the field of experience. We have the spirit, we have the soul, and we have the persona, you could say. But the spirit cannot act. The spirit is the power to be, the power to perceive, the power to do anything. And so it needs to manifest through the soul, which is its vehicle. And the distinction again between soul and mind is that the mind is the active aspect of the soul. So soul in that sense is an identification process. We have the universal aspect of the soul, we have the individual aspect of the soul, and we have the personal aspect of the soul. And it is like a ladder that we climb to go from the more personal to the more impersonal or the individual, and then from the individual merge that into the universal consciousness. So you could say it's 3 different aspects, an expression of consciousness, the one consciousness. Did that answer your question a little bit? Or does anyone else like to add to it?
I always wonder because in every spiritual lectures, meditations, soul is always given a reference.
Yes.
But who sees the soul? Are we the witnessing our own soul? And how would you define? We say that this is a great soul.
Yes.
Saints and monks, and we say Buddha, he was a great soul. Do we say by his attribute, or do you know your own soul? Or, you know?
And that is the process of meditation, is to be able to learn our own soul more. And you could say that the soul has all to do with acquired experience. And it's a little bit contrary to what we meet in regular Buddhism. What we meet in Teosophy is that we have an individualized aspect of the soul. And that individualized aspect is something that stays. That is our true identity. Because spirit itself cannot perceive but through the soul. So when we talk about a great soul, we normally refer to someone who has gained a lot of spiritual experience. And not only have gained the experience, but put it into practice through the way of living. A great soul is not someone that stands up and says wise things. A great soul is someone who lives it. And that's a very important distinction. I mean, when I talk about meditation standing here, and if Dalai Lama would here to talk about meditation standing here, that would be totally different. Because he has a world of experience that I don't have.
Yeah, but the contents and the direction will still be the same.
They will still be the same, yes.
The way he says it,
The way he presents.
no
Yes.
matter where he
Yeah.
will say it, and it will fit.
That's true, but the way we notice the great soul is often by its presence, right?
Yes.
The capacity to be present in this moment. That is the criteria for awakening. Yes, please.
In meditation, is the mind made quiet or it becomes quiet?
Oh, that's a very good question, and I think there's a lot of debate going around about that. Especially depending on which philosophical school you come from. The way I understand it, which is just one opinion, is that by observing the thoughts, by observing the mind, we don't give it the nourishment that it needs to continue chattering, and eventually it will quiet down. So how do you view it?
It's an open question.
Yes.
I don't have a conclusion, I just...
Yes, but it's a very important question.
Continual exploration.
Yes. And that is what this life is about, the continuous exploration of that. Yes, please.
You know, I meditate regularly, and it's very difficult for me to intellectualize the process and even to articulate it. But at the time it works for me, it is essentially a quiet and a connection, but I can't even put words to it. I'm simply sitting there sensing that connection, and I love being in that place and have sometimes difficulty leaving that place to get on with my life.
Very true.
Yes, and that's very true. That it comes to a point where we can, where we no longer can express things in words, and we have to allow for that dimension. That dimension is the taste of something more than what is actually here, and that can be intellectualized. Intellectualization is often a quality of the lower mind, and intelligence or intuitive intelligence is a sign of a higher mind. So the lower mind has a tendency to diversify, and the higher mind has a tendency to synthesize things. And we can see that also when we do our studies in study groups. For study groups, the way I see study groups is that when people get together and study this idea, it's a preparation for meditation, because one tries to focus on topic and stay focused, and when different minds come together like that, we often find that ideas start to well up inside that we cannot really intellectualize, they just come. So there are different ways, but it's a very important aspect that you bring up. Yes, please, you had a question.
I don't know how this would really connect, but there's a book by Lawrence Kushner, and I don't know if I'm getting the title right. It's Invisible Lines of Connection, and we're talking about souls that have passed on, and can we really connect, or can they really connect with us?
That is a whole large topic in itself. It is said that a person who has disincarnated, it goes through a cleaning process which we call kamaloka, and then it goes into a state where it sort of lives out all the highest aspiration that has taken place on earth. It's like stored up energy. So the life of the personality doesn't actually end until we, so to speak, leave that state and are ready to come back into incarnation. Now it is said that a mother that feels love for a child that is left behind, the love, that energy can be felt as a protected energy. The disembodied, or we could say the shells that are left over, the personalities, they do not really communicate a true identity. That's the leftovers, is one way to view it. Yes, Anselm.
This might be a silly question, but how do you keep from falling asleep while trying to meditate?
I think it's a very good question, because we all experience that, right? Come ahead, you have an answer to it? Come.
Yes.
Yes.
When you fall asleep, it means you're tired. It doesn't mean anything else. And then you need to take the time to sleep and then meditate.
Yes. Another way to view it, I don't disagree with you. Another way to view it is, when we fall asleep regularly, it is because our consciousness transitions from one state to the other. So when we try and meditate, we try and focus and keep that witness position. And then it comes to a point where we transition, but we fall asleep. So the practice of meditation will make it possible for us, through a lot of practice, to stay awake while the body goes to sleep. But if it is like you were saying, if we are tired, it's definitely better to stop meditate and to have a rest, because the body is telling us that we need a rest as well. Huh? And foremost of all, if we start to meditate, for those of us who are totally beginners, start with just a few minutes. We train our capacity to concentrate and to focus. And then gradually we can extend that time. And not to be hard on ourselves because we don't manage to see. You know, they say start over 20 minutes. 20 minutes is an eternity when we haven't practiced it before. Huh? So just a few minutes to begin with.
So you have to learn to control your mind.
Yes, yes. To control the mind so the mind can be guided by the heart. Most of the time our mind is controlled by desires. And every now and then we have, you know, an enlightened moment and we respond to the compassion you feel in our heart. But the purpose of meditation is to be able to respond to that voice of the heart more often by quieting the lower mind.
I would say you are very well prepared.
I don't know. Please.
I had a very busy day today, and so when I got home and I was walking down the hallway, my mind said, you need to be quiet and don't turn the TV on and don't start looking at your books. And so I said, okay, I was listening. And so I did lay down on the bed and I put my feet up. And my heart was still pounding, you know, from everything that was going on during the day. And it took me about maybe 10 minutes to calm down. And then I started to feel the freedom.
Yes.
I was becoming who I really was.
That's a beautiful sharing, because you dissociated yourself with your stress and you came into your own inner being, and then you could feel there was this calm that you so much needed, right? That's very important. Yes, please.
I also wanted to comment on falling asleep. I have occasionally done that, but probably one of the most positive meditations I ever had is when I was coming out of sleep, I did not open my mind and I was awareness, and I simply returned to the meditation process, and it was freer and more open than before.
It's a wonderful experience, and the beauty of it is, that once we have experienced, we never forget the taste of it. And that taste, even if there's 20 years in between such an experience, it doesn't really matter, because the taste for it is there, and that's what is important. Now we have many hands. Did you have hands? Yes, please.
Do you know of a group that meditates regularly? Because I would like to find one or create one.
I don't spend enough time here in the United States to know about that, but I'm sure there are groups that you can meditate. It's maybe not something that I recommend in the beginning. I would rather recommend to try and meditate on your own, to create that platform for yourself before going into a group. But that's my personal opinion. Yes, you had something more you wanted to share.
Well, what we were talking about, you ended your talk with saying that the perceiver, there's a perceiver, and then we have to be aware the perceiver is there for the perception, and the action of perceiving it, the perceiver and the perceived are all one.
Yes.
And then we are witness of that one. And it reminded me, because it's like chapter 4 of the Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, it is.
It's almost identical.
Yes.
And to me, that's the center of a meditation.
That's precious, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, do we have any any more questions? Yes, please.
A question on the soul, because when we die, our physical body dies, but then they say that your soul doesn't. So, is it the soul, the memories that we leave behind?
There are different aspects of the soul. There is that aspect of the soul which is eternal, and that's what we call the individuality. Then there is that aspect of the soul which we would call the personality. And the personality gradually disintegrates, but all the memory of that personal soul's experience is being integrated in the individuality. So nothing is ever lost. So we build upon experience, and little by little, incarnation by incarnation, step by step, we will awaken more and more and refine our experiences and make them more in correlation with universal brotherhood, the way we live our lives. And when we finally come to that point where we sort of have, how would I say that, realize that self with capital letters, then we will have a complete memory of all our incarnations lived. That's, for example, said about the Buddha when he got enlightened, that he could see all his past lives. And we all have that capacity in us. We often look outside, but it's all in there. There is nothing to add. But as you were pointing out, rather to remove obstacles. Did you have another question? Yes, please.
Your body could be dead. They say when you stop breathing, they say you're dead. But your mind may still be alive for how long. And you're still dreaming in your mind. And you may see things, but you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's very complicated.
No, it's not so complicated, because it is said that at the moment of death, when the body dies, the heart stops beating. We know that now in neurophysiology that all the cells of the body releases energy. And when all that energy is released, well, then you could say that life is gone. But during that process, it is said that the inner man, the inner being, our true soul, is experiencing everything that has ever taken place during this life. It gets a life review. So all the little events in life that has taken place will be relived in that single short moment. So it's also said that when we have a person, when the body dies, to really pay respect, because it's a holy moment. And the more quiet we can be, the more peaceful we can be around the being that is about to transition, the more that process can go on undisturbed. Because it is said that the last thoughts we have and entertain before the body dies will color our after-death states, even to the point that it will color the next incarnation in that sense. It's like striking a note that will vibrate all the way through. So those are important moments. Yes, please.
After the death of the body, doesn't soul enter in another life? Another body is supposed to be born?
Well, there are actually a few deaths. There is the death of the physical body, and then there is the death of the astral body. And when the identity goes through that cleaning process, where all the desires are burned out, and they are sort of collected like small seeds, Scandic karmic seeds for the future. And then all the longings that we have had during life, of a spiritual character, of an unselfish character, that we haven't been able to express. Well, it is said that they are expressed in a self-created state called Devashan. And Devashan literally means the abode of the gods, right? Yes. And once those energies have been expanded and integrated in the individuality, then there is that moment when we sort of emerge out of Devashan, where we become all-seeing, all-knowing. And we see the justice of everything that has led up to the life we are about to go into. And of course, at this point, with all, the records there, we say, of course, and we go back into incarnation. Yes. And then when we're here again, we say, oh, what is this? We totally forget that view. We say, this is not fair. No? And hopefully meditation will help to take a little bit of the edge of that attitude. Because the main thing in life is not to view oneself as a victim. We are co-creators with nature. We have all the capacities in ourselves to create a better future. Not only for ourselves, but for every sentient being. And we are here as the guardians of what we call, quote unquote, the lower kingdoms, the animal, the plants, the minerals, the elements. So we have to start to improve a little bit. Yes. Joanne, would you kindly bring down the handouts to the table where Beatrice is, so that everyone have a chance to take a handout for those who want to? So there is a little list of literature. And I would like to thank you all for coming and making this moment possible together. Thank you so much.
We talked about reincarnation so much, I'm reminded of two reincarnations met each other in the street. One of them said to the other, "You again?" I'd like to believe he was a very important